Guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Intuitive Angling. And man, I really appreciate you guys making some time out of your day and out of your schedule to spend with me on the video today. I always appreciate that. Guys, today I want to talk about Tucker Smith, the young angler that just recently won last weekend. He won $500,000 in the man, it was called the Ultimate Angler Tournament or Ultimate Angler Challenge on Lake Guntersville. But I want to talk about that particular tournament, talk a little bit about Tucker, and sort of give you guys my opinion on this whole scenario that's been brewing around this tournament here. So we're going to get into that in today's episode. Also, guys, for get started in today's video, we are getting ready to get in the middle of jerkbait season. It's about a month away. I'm going to be doing a lot of jerkbait tips on the channel here. One tip I want to throw with you guys real quick is if you're fishing a heavily pressured lake that gets a lot of fishing pressure, or if the fishing conditions are really tough, like a bright bluebird sky with not much wind, guys, try a silent jerkbait like this Megabass Silent 110. A silent jerkbait is a lot different than a regular jerkbait. The internal balancers, like in this Vision 110, are fixed so they don't make any noise in it. And a silent jerkbait will get you a lot more bites in those type of conditions. So I'll put my Silent 110 link and my Tackle Warehouse link in the description of this video if you guys would like to try a couple. But it'll definitely get you a lot more bites than a conventional jerkbait when the fishing's tough there. Okay, guys, I want to get into this. There's a lot I want to unpack in this video because there's a lot more than the obvious. But I didn't even know, first of all, I don't know Tucker Smith. I've never met him. I don't know anything about him. I don't know what type of an angler he is. Apparently, he's an up-and-comer on the Bassmaster Elite Series, I believe. And he won that big, like I said, I can't remember, it's called the Ultimate Angler Tournament or Ultimate Fishing Challenge or whatever, on Lake Guntersville last week, $500,000. It was a no live scope tournament. No spotlighting was allowed in this tournament, which was awesome. And as a result of that, I've noticed and I've gotten a ton of people forward me memes and videos of a bunch of goobs out there that are just jumping all over this. Hey, Randy, he goes, you know, you're so full of crap, you know what you're talking about. Here's like Tucker Smith, who just won this, he's a young angler that just won this live scope tournament, this no live scope tournament. So what do you have to say now? First of all, I don't know Tucker Smith. I don't know if he uses live scope or not. I don't know anything about this tournament. I can't keep up with everything. There's so many young anglers that are fishing now. I can't keep up with all of them, and I certainly can't keep up with all the tournaments. So I didn't know anything about this until I started getting all these messages from my subscribers about it. So I want to speak to this a little bit about this misconception of my attitude towards young anglers. Okay, now first of all, Aaron Martins was one of my closest friends for over 15 years. One of my best friends for over 15 years until he passed away. Apparently Tucker knew Aaron because Tucker talks very favorably about Aaron. Aaron never mentioned anything to me about Tucker, so I wasn't familiar with their relationship. But if Aaron liked Tucker Smith, I'm sure I would love Tucker Smith too, because I'd share a lot of the common threads with Aaron. So if Aaron likes him, I'm sure he's a good dude. I'm not saying one bad word about Tucker Smith. I don't know anything about him. But, you know, I'm assuming from these podcasters that are coming out and they're gushing over this situation here that he must be known for fishing live scope. That's the only thing I can do. That's the only thing I can guess. And then he wins a tournament without the use of live scope. So therefore, they think my argument about, you know, younger anglers, you know, not being able to compete without live scope is just a bunch of full of crap. It's full of crap. All of this is wrong. First of all, one of the things I want to say to all you guys out there that think that I don't like young anglers and that I have something against young anglers, you guys are full of crap. You need to take a seat and shut up, because that's not it at all. I love the young bass anglers. I have nothing against them whatsoever. My entire premise on this entire, you know, discussion of forward-facing sonar is I've always put the blame on the tournament organizations for forcing these young anglers to have to use that technology to compete. I understand that they have to do it. They can't compete without it. I totally get it. And I want to dig into this a little bit about this misconception that is being spread around by a lot of people that don't know any better, that there's some type of a bias or a prejudice against young anglers simply because they use this type of technology. So I want to dig into this and clarify this a lot in the video here. First of all, you simply, if you do not, if you have been raised and brought up using forward-facing sonar and live scope, then you simply do not have the years behind you as far as the mastery of seasonal patterns and movements and the nuances of bass fishing, about bass positioning, their mood and their personality, and how different weather variables affect them, and how different type of factors, both controlled and uncontrolled variables, affect bass movement and behavior. You simply, that would be like saying that you can solve some complex physics problem in college if you've never had any physics, if you've never had any physics classes. So it makes perfect sense that a young angler that is brought up without being taught the basic foundations of the things that I've talked about, the real pure bass fishing, it makes common sense that they can't utilize those techniques if they've been brought up and their primary game is forward-facing sonar. That is a given. There's nobody that can argue with that. That is a given. It's just like you can't just all of a sudden start bass fishing and know everything about bass fishing. But, we all have known that forward-facing sonar has been a shortcut to success, especially for a lot of the younger anglers, because it bypasses all that. And you're fishing for a different group of fish, but nevertheless, you are still reliant upon that technology to locate those fish for you. Now, when a young angler like Tucker Smith, or any other young angler out there, does well in a tournament and wins a tournament, whether it's with forward-facing sonar or without it, you can't lump the entire group into those caliber of anglers like apparently Tucker Smith is, or guys like Trey McKinney, or some of the younger anglers that have really done well. These are exceptions to the rule. And ever since I've been fishing, there's always been those freaks of nature out there that just are better than everybody else. Kevin Van Dam was one of them. Jay Yells, when he first started, was one of them. There's always been these, what I call 1%ers, that are just on a different level. That's the only way that you can say it. There's a group of anglers out there, and it's a very, very small elite group of anglers that are on a different pinnacle from everybody else. They're the ones that are pissed off if they get 15th place in a tournament, where the average angler, even if they're a great tournament angler, they would be tickled to death with 15th place in a tournament. So when you have an angler like Tucker Smith or Trey McKinney or whatever that does well in a tournament, not using live scope, that doesn't cover the whole bases. And you can't say that the argument has no validity behind it just because of isolated an example. Because anyone can catch it. It doesn't take, you don't have to have that much knowledge in bass fishing to throw a jig up underneath a boat dock without using forward-facing sonar. You can know nothing about fishing whatsoever, and you can throw a jig up underneath a boat dock and catch a bass. That's not what I'm talking about. The entire argument that I have made with forward-facing sonar giving younger anglers an advantage is the fact that it is a shortcut to success. Nobody can deny that. Because let's say, for example, you don't know anything about bass fishing and you're wanting to learn about bass fishing. And you can spend 1 week fishing with me, and then you can spend 1 week fishing with a live scope fanatic. And that live scope fanatic is going to do nothing but show you live scope techniques and how to read a live scope and how to utilize live scope and how to adjust your settings on your live scope. And then you have me that's going to give you a complete seminar and tutorial on the deeper aspects, the nuances, the personality and mood, seasonal patterns and behavior, all the fine-tooth details that come with traditional bass fishing without technology. Now, given that fact, my technique and my method is going to be, you're going to learn at a snail's pace, because it takes years and years and years of getting in that situation and seeing that situation unfold. Whereas if you're with a live scoper, all you have to do is teach them how to fan that transducer out there in that open water and see the fish moving in real time. So you can't equate both techniques being equal, because they're not. And that's the point that I try to make in bass fishing. Now, this whole conversation of having this judgment and this bias against young anglers for the older anglers like myself is complete bullshit. That doesn't have anything to do with it. I've always made the premise and the statement is that I feel sorry for the younger anglers that they have been forced to do this because they are missing out on so much. Now, there are some anglers out there, young anglers, that live and breathe and they have all the time and they have all the money to go out and spend time on the water. That's not the case with most anglers. Most young anglers do not have the financial backing or the time to spend that much time practicing, pre-practicing, and all that type of stuff. So that separates some anglers from others that are young. But ultimately, we have been put in this position and we have been divided as a bass fishing community over this technology because of the tournament organizations. Those are the people that are to blame for this. If the tournament organizations would have went down the same road that they did, like with the Alabama rig, or some type of rules on, accessing hard to reach areas by getting out of your boat, if they would have utilized and put those regulations and limitations like they have not with live scope, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. This everything that we have seen go down in the past 3 or 4 years in bass fishing would not exist. We have seen a degradation of the sport. We've seen a division in the sport. We've seen outrage. We've seen thousands of people cancel their Bassmaster memberships over live scope. We've seen the fishing industry take a massive hit to the balls in other lure categories that are affecting tackle sales in a big way because of forward-facing sonar. We've seen a loss of the mystery and the magic and the wonderment of the sport and the unknown of the sport. And we've seen our sport transform into something that's literally unrecognizable from what it was 20 years ago. And when you have such a transition as far as the demographic in anglers that are successful that has taken place over just the last 2 or 3 years, you can't deny that technology does not affect that. Because when you look at the fact that 20 years ago, the average Bassmaster Classic qualifier was close to 40 years old, and then fast forward to 2025 and the average Bassmaster Classic qualifier is 15, 18, 20 years younger on the average, you can't deny the reality of what has happened there. Technology has had such a massive influence on the sport that has completely transformed the demographic of the sport that remained unchanged for over 40 or 50 years, just in a matter of 2 or 3 years. So my point of the entire conversation is if you took that technology away from those anglers, I'm not saying the young anglers couldn't catch fish, but they simply could not catch fish as well on a large scale as those anglers that have more dirt time and time on the water. And we'll never know because those anglers have gotten weeded out. The way that the qualification criteria has been set up over the past 3 or 4 years to get to the top levels with live scope and forward-facing sonar, it has weeded out most of the hammers. It has weeded out the true artists in bass fishing that understand those nuances and movements of bass and understand bass as a creature on an intimate level better than anyone ever could because of that technology. And I'm here to say, guys, if live scope was made illegal 5 or 10 years ago in the tournaments, you would have a 100% different demographic right now on the top level circuits. The Bassmaster Elite Series, you'd still have your guys like Jason Christie and Greg Hackney and John Cox and Dean Rojas and all those type of guys. They would be dominating the tournaments. And now those guys have been cast aside, and you have a lot of anglers out there like Tucker Smith. No disrespect to Tucker Smith or the younger anglers, but there's so many of them out there, I can't keep up with it. I can't keep up with the names and who they are because there's a constant emergence of the new anglers, because everybody else that has not adopted that technology has gotten weeded out of the sport and will continue to get weeded out of the sport until it's made illegal. But we've already crossed this precipice because that it's not going to go back. We've already alienated such a large demographic of the tournament fishing population that they don't have any interest in it. I have talked, guys, to so many of my Bassmaster Elite Series friends and the guys that fish the Bass Pro Tour, the veterans of the sport, that they have just saying, it's just not worth it. It's not fun anymore. I don't have the passion for the sport because of what live scope has done to the sport. So anyway, guys, that just goes back to the whole thing. But want to say to those, those goober podcasters that have been coming out saying, what do you got to say now, Randy? You don't know what you're talking about. Just sit down and take a seat. You guys don't know what the hell you're talking about. I love young bass anglers. I respect them. I want them to be successful. They are the future of the sport. I want them to go down the right road. I want them to learn about the sport and respect the sport the same way everybody else that came up behind them. I want them to have respect for all of the people that basically they're riding on the shoulders of the people that made this sport great over the past 50 years. And I want that to be honored, and I want that to be respected, because that's what I did. When I started out, I was in reverence of those guys like, Bill Dance and Roland Martin, and Hank Parker, and, Don Butler, and, all those guys that were back in the 70s. So anyway, guys, just wanted to throw that out there, like I said. And again, to Tucker Smith, congratulations on winning $500,000, especially without live scope. That's an unbelievable achievement. And hope you guys are doing well. We'll check in later.